So in this lecture we'll be studying the causes of earthquake. This is the continuation to my previous lecture on earthquakes, and the first cause to start with is tectonic plate movements. This is the major cause of earthquakes, and you might have studied this even in your lower classes, that the earthquakes are caused due to tectonic plate movements. So there is a theory which is called as elastic rebound theory, given by H.F. Reed, and what it says is that when a mass of rock is stressed, so according to this, the rock behaves like elastic masses and stress is acting over it. So when it is stressed, it is going to behave like an elastic mass for a very short time. So this is the stage which is just before the faulting has taken place. We all know what faulting is, that a crack will be formed and there will be movement along that crack. So just before the faulting takes place, because of the elastic nature of the rock, it assumes a curvature like this. And see, in this stage just before faulting has taken place, the rocks, due to elasticity, bend and form a curve. You can see a curve being formed, right? As soon as the fracture takes place, the restoring moments start acting on the rocks. So as soon as this fracture takes place, this part of the rock, I'll say the left part and the right part, the left part of the rock which has a curvature like this. Okay, I will use a different pen. It has a curvature this way, and the right part of the rock which has a curvature this way, right? A curvature like this. So there will be a restoring moment acting opposite to these curvatures, because this restoring moment will try to bring this rock again, it will try to make it flat. Again, this restoring moment will try to make the rock flat. So these restoring moments are of huge magnitude, because so much of strain energy is set up inside the body of the rock that these restoring moments attain a very high magnitude in bringing those rocks back. And the moment it happens, it's like just a snap. Okay, see, from this point to this point, you can see how this side of the rock moves down and how the right side of the rock moves up, and that is a very snapping kind of a thing, and it releases a huge amount of energy when that happens, and that energy translates to an earthquake. So due to the restoring moments, the rocks snap back or rebound into its original position, releasing a lot of energy in this process in the form of seismic waves, thus causing an earthquake. So when that snapping thing happens, there is a huge release of energy, which is nothing but your earthquake. So this elastic rebound theory has three phases. First step is the preparatory process. In this phase, a non-hydrostatic stress field is created in a certain region around the fault. So in the region where the faulting is going to take place, around that region, a non-hydrostatic stress field. Non-hydrostatic meaning, first we'll understand what a hydrostatic stress is. This is actually a part of your mechanics of solids. So consider this block, and when only axial forces are acting on this block from all the directions, right? When only the axial forces are acting on this block, it is called as a hydrostatic stress field, and no shear stress is acting. But if the shear stress is also acting along with it, like you might have learned this, right? Shear stress is acting like this. So on all surfaces, the shear stress is acting. So that is your non-hydrostatic stress field. So for faulting to take place, a non-hydrostatic stress field is created in a certain region, and this defines the area which the earthquake is going to affect. So till the area till which that stress field is there, around that area the earthquake is going to affect. In this process, a number of foreshocks are recorded. These are due to small arrangements in the rock zones. So because of the stress field being formed in that area, the rocks in that area try to readjust themselves. because even they don't want to get disturbed, so they try to rearrange themselves, and therefore a lot of small trembling happens. You might have heard about this, that when the tsunami took place, there were elephants which ran away with the tourists themselves. The tourists were riding those elephants, and just before the tsunami took place, these elephants sensed that something is taking place, and they ran away from that place. So how did they sense that something was taking place? So animals like elephants and many other birds as well, they have this sensory thing that they can even feel minute of the shocks which are there, minute vibrations also they can feel. So before that tsunami was taking place, there were number of foreshocks which were produced, and those animals sensed these foreshocks, and they understood that something is not right, and they ran away from that place. So this is that first preparatory phase of or the first step of elastic rebound theory. Then when the faulting finally takes place, this is the second step or the main shock phase, because after the faulting takes place, the earthquake happens, right? There is a release of the energy. So in this phase, the rupture takes place along the fault, and all or part of the stored elastic energy is released. Some energy is also transferred into heat. Third step, that is aftershock phase. So it is the post-failure readjustment, during which the medium is restored to a state of equilibrium with a series of aftershocks. So after the faulting has taken place, again it disturbs the rocks around it. So after the faulting has taken place, after the earthquake has taken place, those rocks which got disturbed, they have to settle down. So when they settle down, they also produce some shocks. Those are called as aftershocks. And there are earthquakes which produce aftershocks for years after it has occurred. I don't remember exactly the name of that earthquake, but there is one earthquake which is producing aftershocks till today, and that earthquake took place some 20 or some years back. So this happens, and aftershocks are nothing but the readjustment of the rocks which are affected by the earthquake. So this is due to the remaining strain energy in faults or the strain induced inside other rocks which have been displaced due to earthquake. This is almost equal to a small earthquake. The aftershock can last for several weeks, months, or even years, as I already told you. Next is reservoir associated earthquake, and this is one of the man-made type of earthquakes. We studied in the previous lecture that earthquakes are not only naturally formed, but they are also man-made. So this reservoir associated earthquake is due to dams. So it kind of when we read this, it doesn't make sense that how can dams produce earthquakes. So the reason is the water impounding in the reservoir. So this water, you see how it is coming with such a lot of force. So when this water strikes the ground, it is said to cause an earthquake, and not in all the cases, but in few cases where the rock on which that water is going to strike, that rock was already stressed. So if the rock was already stressed, I will call it as rock basin, because that is what it is called, rock basin. Let me write it correctly. Rock basin, if it is already stressed and if it is impounded by the water, then that those rocks tend to readjust themselves and it causes an earthquake. So the Koyna Dam tragedy, it happened in India as well. On 10th December 1967, an earthquake of magnitude 7.5 struck Koyna. Energy released of this earthquake was more than Hiroshima atom bomb. The surprising part is that it happened in an area which was supposed to be most safe from earthquake. I don't know if you know this or not, but India is divided into a number of zones. I will try to draw. consider it to be India. Of course, it does not look like. But yeah, the main thing to focus here is that our states which are there, they are divided into different zones. Okay, and zone from 2 to 5. And there is zone 2, zone 3, zone 4 and zone 5. Zone 1 is not there. Zone 2 being the safest and zone 5 being the worst. So the mostly the regions which are here, northeast regions, they come under zone 5 because they are most prone to earthquake. Maharashtra comes in zone 3, Goa comes in, I think it comes in zone 2. It is considered to be safe from earthquakes. Yeah, so this is how the regions are divided into zones, and Maharashtra is at 3. So this Koina, it comes into Maharashtra, and it was not considered to be earthquake prone area, but still the earthquake took place because of the impounding water of the dam. The impounding water is believed to have caused a stress field at the base of the reservoir. This stress field caused a readjustment of rocks below the faults to take place, and thus the release of energy took place and earthquake happened. Cause of that reservoir earthquakes. So there is no agreement on the presumption that mere filling of water and the resulting additional load on strata below the reservoir could be the sole cause of tremors. So it is not agreed that only filling of water in that reservoir can cause tremors, because if that was the case, then earthquakes would have been recorded at all the major reservoirs of the world, right? But it is agreed that in certain regions which are already critically stressed, earthquakes could be caused during and after filling of water in the reservoir due to the following two reasons. First is the rock adjusts to the new loads by bending or sagging, which causes stress. This readjustment may be sufficient in certain already critically balanced cases to trigger seismic shocks. In the normal case, however, the additional stress may be simply absorbed by the enormous stable rock below. So what this first case says is that if this is the rock bed below the reservoir, because of the water that is there and because of the water that comes over it, these rocks try to bend, which happens in the beams as well. So the bending of rocks creates a lot of stresses inside the rock, right? A lot of stresses are created inside the rock, and if the rock was already critically stressed and this additional stress came over it, then that faulting will take place and earthquake will happen. The second cause is that increased pore pressure. So it is believed that when water is stored in a reservoir, the pore pressure in the basin rocks is increased considerably. I will explain what a pore pressure is. Such an increase has an adverse effect on the shearing strength of the basin rocks, which may lead to the failure and slippage and associated increase in seismicity. Okay, to explain this pore water pressure, understand that there are some rocks which are called as porous rocks, and these rocks are capable of holding water inside them. Okay, so they are capable of holding water inside them. Now, just imagine that the entire reservoir is made up of such kind of rocks. Okay, it is made up of such kind of rocks, and there is a dam body here. The body of the dam is here like this, and there is the reservoir water which is here. Or I will just explain you when it is increasing. Let's say the level of the water is here. We have studied in fluid mechanics that what will be the pressure at the base. Because of this, if the height is h1, the pressure at the bottom will be gamma into h1, right? The pressure at the bottom will be gamma into h1. As the height increases, let's say it became h2, then it became h3, the pressure also increases, gamma h2 for height h2 and gamma h3 for height h3. At a certain point, when this pressure becomes too much at this bottom place, this pressure also translates to this pore water which is inside the body of the rock. Okay, so this pressure of gamma H3 which is there at this particular level, it is also the same pressure is there in the pore water of the rock also. So you understand that now this pore water is going to put stress on the body of the rock. This pore water will try to put stress on the body of the rock, which will cause the shearing or breakage of the rock, and because of that it will lose its strength, and then there might be some failure or slippage of the rocks, and ultimately it will lead to a fault. So what we studied here is that there is water inside the body of the rock. We call them as porous rocks. That water is called as pore water because it is inside the pore of the rock. The pressure of the pore water increases as the height of the water stored in the reservoir increases. So as the height goes on increasing, the pressure is increasing, and this pore water pressure is ultimately going to put stress on the rock which is holding that water, and then there will be cracks and ultimately there will be a fault. So this is also one of the conditions which we can speculate for the earthquake to be formed in the reservoirs. So this was it for today's lecture. In the next lecture we will be studying more of earthquake. Till then, take care. Thank you.